The Green Bay Packers are in a post Aaron Rodgers world, and so I figured, you know what? Again, we love to do predictions, but I kind of, I made this series of upside downside, talking about what could go right and what could go wrong, because that's, I think, just as an interesting of a discussion to have of not just predictions, but what's the best case scenario and worst case scenario. So first, starting off with Jordan Love, which is talk about upside downside. I mean, it kind of all starts with Jordan Love. It's a possibility he could come into the league and be awesome. Like, I know Bears fans and Lions fans and Vikings fans don't want to hear that. That is an option on the table. And if Jordan Love does come into the league and play great, well, right off the bat, there is your upside. Downside, though, you can definitely look at it as well. Listen, I'm not even saying, the downside is Jordan Love is Zach Wilson, right? Or like it's just a complete mess, but is just a young player who hasn't played NFL football and takes him some time to figure out exactly the best way to, get into the league. That's a totally reasonable thing that could happen, and, I could totally see it. So, the upside downside, obviously, Jordan Love is a huge part of it. Running backs, I think, will be good. Wide receiving room, even its upside is a little bit tough because I think Watson, certainly Christian Watson, has a ton of upside. Romeo Doubs, I think, would be the other guy who comes in and plays well. But, there's a lot of young, unproven guys here to round out the depth. I think even in their best case scenario, it's not the players playing awesome, the depth players playing awesome. More so, Matt LaFleur proving that he doesn't necessarily need a ton of great receiving options to get guys open, which he has done in the past of gotten sort of lesser talented receivers to still get open consistently. He's usually had Devontae Adams to take a lot of pressure off of the other guys, but still, maybe Watson, if the upside would be Watson, plays very well. Obvious downside there. Maybe Christian Watson kind of had a flash in the pan run last year and is just a fine player, in which case, maybe Romeo Doubs doesn't even look like a number 2 option, and now who do you have in that weapons room? And, the offensive line as well is one where, I guess, again, the upside is maybe these young players play better. Zach Tom and Josh Myers both step up. I think Bakhtiari and Jenkins should be good, so I'm not really too concerned there. You also have John Runyon, who realistically, probably will be fine for the Packers. So I think probably the Packers' offensive line just is going to be kind of underwhelming next year. But if Myers and Tom can step it up, maybe there's the upside there. The defense is another complete upside, downside scenario. How many great players are coming off of down seasons from the Packers' perspective? Rashawn Gary, due to injuries, wasn't able to do a ton last year. I didn't think Kenny Clark had his best year. The corners usually are very good with Jair Alexander and Rasul Douglas, but the secondary did not play particularly well last year. Part of that was Darnell Savage, who I think, as usual, is usually a fine player. Last year was a mess, though. So if Savage takes the next step up, if Douglas and Alexander look good, if Stokes has a bounce back year because he was rough last year but had a pretty promising rookie year, if Quay Walker can take a step forward, if Devontae Wyatt can take a step forward, if Preston Smith can be Preston Smith, if Lucas Van Ness comes in and looks like a really good edge rusher, this could be a loaded defense. But I said if a lot there. And if those things don't happen, and if this defense looks like it did last year, maybe due to poor coaching, are we going to have another bad defense? So that's kind of why I think the Packers are maybe the ultimate upside downside team here, because I think their upside is defense plays great, right? So you got a great defense. Jordan Love comes in. I still don't think that, okay, yes, technically, no one thought Mahomes was going to be Mahomes, but realistic upside, Jordan Love comes in and plays very well, and is like a top 10 quarterback. That's a realistic upside for Jordan Love. So with that, if Matt LaFleur can scheme some stuff open, maybe this could still be a top 10 offense and like a top 5 defense, which is easily a playoff team. I still don't know if their upside is championship contender this year. I just don't know if I see that because, even with all those things hitting, I still don't know if there's enough talent for this to become like a top 5 offense, which usually in today's NFL you kind of need to be a championship contender with some notable exceptions. And again, just to reiterate, technically every team has championship upside, right? That's can be said for all of them, but I'm just talking realistic championship upside. Doesn't seem too high for Green Bay. Well, what about the downside? How bad could this get for Green Bay? I think Jordan Love just takes some time to develop, which is fine, right? If Jordan Love has a bad year, I don't think you run him out of town. You accept that this thing's going to take some time. So that's number one, is really the offense. Offense has a low floor. It just does. It could be a tough offense if things go poorly. Listen, good running backs can only get you so far. That's just the reality of the situation. And if this team is Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, Christian Watson, and that's it, I guess you still have Ellington Jenkins and David Bakhtiari. But, again, a line of 2 good offensive linemen and 3 not great offensive linemen isn't a great offensive line. Then you could have some trouble there. Again, Christian Watson, I think, will do some nice things. I think that his floor is still a good player, right? Feels like, and same thing with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. Their floor are still very good players, I would think, this next season. But if you don't have great quarterback play and you don't have great wide receiver depth, even with a great coach, which they do have, there's still only so much that can get you. And like I said, the defense is one of those, on paper it should work, but it should have worked last year. And there isn't that much new pieces this year. So it isn't crazy to think it could have another bad statistical year. And if this is a rough defense that you're now relying on a very unproven quarterback to have to throw the ball 35 times a game, and if he's not ready for the task, I do think this team has a low floor. I think this team, would they be competing for the first overall pick? That seems unlikely. I don't think that they're quite that low of a floor, but it's not crazy at all that this team could be picking, top 7 overall next year if things bottom out. To me, that is their downside. That is their floor. So it's a team with a high ceiling, a relatively high ceiling. They could win 10, 11 games next year. I could easily see that happening. They also could win 5, 6 games next year if things bottom out. And if they hit their upside or hit their downside, it's those things that I think will be happening. Those things I mentioned, that's why I think it would end up being that way. So yeah. And again, what are my predictions? Well, you can check out the podcast where I talk about my predictions and what I think is going to happen. But again, it's kind of fun to talk about not just what I think is going to happen, but what realistically could happen. What is the positive or the negative? It's kind of why I like doing this sort of exercise. So, yeah, let me know what you think of all of this in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.